the boat ramp. Most of them have a bus or something like that.
Now, you said it's mostly seniors, but I think you did say when I heard you talking one day is that if a local organization decides they want to spend some time with youth, or like you said, veterans who may be coming back from the Gulf Wars or whatever it might be, that would be something that's a local decision, is it not?
Yeah, that's pretty much left up to the local chapters. Some of the chapters do more youth events, some of them do more veterans. If there's a person on the board that has really a heart for veterans, they'll end up doing more veterans events. That's typical. I think that Brainerd probably will do quite a few veterans events, and frankly, it's very fertile ground for this organization to grow in Brainerd, and I wouldn't be surprised within 2 or 3 years if they have 2 boats and are taking more veterans and youth out, just because it's a great location for this, and I think you'll see a lot of people from all walks of life being served through this program.
Well, I think it's a great organization, and it's going to meet the needs of a lot of things that haven't been met in this area, providing opportunities for people that normally just don't get opportunities to do this sort of thing. Maybe you could just go through again how people contact you if they want to get involved as a captain or a volunteer, or if their organization would like to start having their folks participate. What's the best way to get a hold of you folks?
The best way to get a hold of us, I'll give you 2 ways. Number 1 is to go to our website, which is lgfws.com. That's Let's Go Fishing with Seniors.com.
And we'll try to put this on our screen so people can look at this too.
Okay, and then specifically for the Brainerd area, Dan Kane is the president, and
is that with a C or a K?
K-A-N-E.
K-A-N-E, okay.
Right. And his email, he set up a separate email address just to for the Let's Go Fishing, and it's just letsgofishingbrainerd@yahoo.com.
Well, it's a wonderful organization, Bernie, and we wish you the very best, and we'll keep an eye on how it's doing.
It's going to be terrific.
Thanks a lot.
I'm really excited about it. Thank you for this opportunity.
You bet. Zach Israelson is 4 Wind's newest student reporter, replacing Naomi Landecker, who was with our program for 3 years. Naomi has gone on to college in Arkansas and is still doing work in television there. Zach is a junior at the Staples Motley High School, and his first assignment was to interview his high school basketball coach, Lynn Peterson, who, while in his 35th year of coaching, is approaching 660-some wins, making him the 4th winningest coach in Minnesota basketball history.
What got you into coaching?
Well, I was brought up on athletics. When I was a young kid, we were playing baseball all the time. In high school, I played football, basketball, baseball. In college, I started out playing basketball and baseball. Knew I couldn't play both and wasn't good enough to play basketball, so stuck with baseball, and that's, I think, was part of my life, and it stayed that way.
Right. So where did you go to college after?
I went to school at Concordia College in Moorhead, played there for 4 years, went into Deer Creek, was my first teaching job, taught there for 8 years, and then went to 1 year of grad school at St. Cloud State University.
So how's the game changed? How would you say the game has changed since you've started coaching?
I think in terms of the style the game's changed. I think the three-point line has added a lot to the game. You'll see a lot more with three-point shooting. The shot clock has added a whole new dimension to the game. You can go back years ago, I think teams were very deliberate, fundamental. You were seeing scores in the 40s where you're seeing scores in the 80s now. And so I think probably from the high school level all the way up to the NBA, they try to make it a fans game as well.
What's it like? Well, what's your record, first of all, as a high school coach?
I think, let's see, we must be about 662 and 232, I think it is, yeah, because I think it was 656 and 230 at the beginning of the year.
What's it like being one of the winningest coaches in Minnesota basketball history?
Well, I think, first of all, it means you've been around a long time. It means you've had some good talent. You've had some good kids to work with. And I think, again, if a coach is probably going to ever pat himself on the back, I think you have to have the passion for the game and you have to work hard at it. And I think I've done that.
How would you say you've changed as a coach throughout the years?
I don't know if I've changed a lot. I think that, we try to instill a fundamental approach to the game. We try to make the game the same that I think it has been years ago. Obviously, I think that the impact of the summer coaching, the AAU teams, numbers of other opportunities that kids now have days when you look at anywhere from a cell phone to a Game Boy to a PlayStation to whatever Wii games and so on. And I think so that reason there's probably more distractions for students, if that's the word you want to use, or opportunities, whatever you want to use for a word. So I think you have to realize that the sport of basketball, for example, is not for everyone, and certain kids have different expectations coming into it, whether you're there just to be part of the team, whether you expect to be a star of the team, and I think there's a fit for everyone.
All right. How is it different from coaching like a state caliber team to a team that's more of an off team and just kind of a get-together group of guys?
I don't think it's any different. I think as a coach, you have to realize that you're going to have teams that are probably, if you want to use the word talented, more talented than other teams. That's just the nature of the beast. And I think that as a coach, it's your obligation as a coach going into every year to pour your heart and soul into the program, whether you win one game or whether you win 31 games. And I think the other thing that a coach has to realize is that there may be a group of kids that you have on a team that isn't as talented. Maybe they're younger, maybe they're just not as talented, that it's very important to them. And it might be as important to them as it is to a state caliber team. And just because they're maybe not as talented doesn't mean that we'll chuck this year off and wait till the next year. Because I've kind of used that same approach in other activities, because you look at yourself. Golf might be as important to you as basketball is to me. And I think we have to keep that diversity in mind with all of our kids.
All right. Is there anything you would change about the way that you've coached? Is there anything you could, if you could?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question in a way, but I think that first of all, I think coaches, in order to be fair to yourself and fair to your kids, you've been around enough to know that we talk about mistakes and so on. Coaches make mistakes, and we make mistakes every day. We make mistakes every day in practice. We make mistakes in every game. There's always things that we would do differently, at times, particularly maybe after a bad practice or a loss. But as coaches, we look at that and we try to, first of all, before putting too much on the kids, we say, what should have we done differently? And I think that you have to be open-minded enough to realize that we're human, we're going to make enough mistakes ourselves. So I think from that standpoint, you always look at it day by day, and you maybe say, well, maybe we shouldn't have done this, maybe we should have practiced harder, maybe we shouldn't have practiced as hard. So from that standpoint, I don't know, those types of things there's always things you would do differently, but on the other end of the spectrum, I think, and if I look at the overall picture, I'm pretty happy, and I'm pretty proud of our program, not just for me, but for all of the kids that have been through it.
How does this year's team compare to teams you've had in the past?
I never get into that. I never have, and I never will. I think that every team has their own identity. Obviously, this year we're pretty well loaded in seniors. We've had other years where we've been loaded in seniors. We've had teams that have been in the state tournament, maybe that have been smaller and quicker. Maybe the others have been bigger. Full court teams, half court teams, and so on. So I think that in terms of comparing teams or comparing players, I just never do that. I never do that because if I go through the 100 or 200 kids that have gone through our basketball program, they're all very special, whether they're talented or not. And all of the teams that we've had are very special, whether you're in a state tournament or not.
Well, then, what do you think a couple of the upside is to this team? What do you think the strengths of this team would be?
Well, I think, first of all, talent is one, and I think we have a good mix of quickness. We have some decent size. We're probably not the quickest team and we're not the biggest team, but we have adequate in both of them, so that allows us some flexibility to be able to do some things, whether we want to go small, go big. I think we have some depth. I think that allows us the flexibility to be able to go to the bench should we get into foul trouble and not have to adjust things because we have to, but adjust things because we want to.
How have the players changed since you've started coaching?
I don't know if players have changed a lot. I think you can talk about the game changing. You can maybe talk about the other opportunities that students have, that we had talked about earlier. But I think by and large, I look at the kids that I've had in the basketball program, whether it's 2009, 10, or whether it's 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I don't really think the kids have changed. I think kids still want to play and kids want to learn. There's always growing pains to any type of a learning situation in education in general. I don't care if you're a teacher or coach, but when I look at the kids that I have in our program, like I said, whether it's this year or the past year, I think we've got great kids, and I think that we always have great kids, and that maybe that's one thing that keeps me in coaching.
So would you say that the kids are as dedicated as they are, or do you think they're as dedicated now as they were as opposed to 20 years ago?
Again, I think that's a harder question too, because 20 years ago there was no traveling teams, there was no AAUs. I think that most of our work in the off season constituted coming to the gym, working on fundamentals and that type of thing. Coaches even at that time couldn't even coach in the summer at times. And nowadays you have kids playing AAU. You have other opportunities. Let's say that you look at your three-sport athlete, you're trying to find that balance in there of still letting them be a kid if they want to go to the beach or if they want to go fishing or anything in the summer, and yet they might be a three-sport athlete. So you try to allow them that flexibility of being a kid without owning them. But I think they are dedicated. I think they're dedicated as they want to be dedicated, and I think sometimes it means that some players' expectations of the game are different than other players' expectations. Some kids are probably coming in and putting in a lot of time, and that's their goal. And another kid might be putting in more time in a different activity, and that's their goal, and that's fine, because I think that everybody's not the same, and the same sport isn't for everyone.
Is there any advice you would give to a younger coach just starting his career as a head coach?
I think you need to really understand what it takes to be a coach. And I think that down the road, if you're married, your spouse really needs to understand what it takes to be a coach, because I don't think you can be a coach without your spouse being part of a coaching family. If everybody could just go to a game and go to practice, it would be fun. And it still is fun. But you have to remember that as a coach, if you want to do justice to your kids and to your program, you're probably playing 2 nights a week, you're probably scouting 2 or 3 nights a week, and you're probably washing towels one day and doing stats one day, and probably not spending as much time with family that you should be spending time. But if you've got a spouse that understands that and accepts it and is part of it, I think that's something that can determine the future of a coach. I think the other thing, as far as a younger coach getting into it, I think the first thing is that you kind of, maybe again talking back about the family, you have to realize the heart and soul and the passion that you have to have. You're only going to get out of it, and your kids are only going to get out of it what you put into it. So if you're not going to be the leader and the forefront runner on it, your players aren't going to follow. I think that probably, if anything, when we talked about changes earlier, Zach, if you talk about maybe how the game has changed, I think probably the game has changed with the parents and the traveling and the boosters and the traveling teams, because again, parents are more involved, because now you've got the boys or the girls that are down in 4th grade, where probably mom or dad are their coach, and these kids have put in time and effort and money to go to these tournaments and that tournament and everything else. And so then all of a sudden, when they're up on a level, they kind of expect their expectations to play and whatever it may be. And I think that as a coach, if you think that you're not going to avoid parents and you're not going to avoid the community, and you shouldn't avoid, because it's